The arrival at Windmere Hall. The rain had begun just after noon, thin, persistent rain that streaked the windows of the first-class carriage and blurred the English countryside into shades of grey and green. Hercule Poirot, immaculate even in travel, sat upright with a small valise at his feet, his gloved hands resting neatly on the handle of his cane. Across from him, Inspector James Japp of Scotland Yard had long given up on small talk and was instead dozing fitfully, his hat tipped over his eyes. Poirot regarded him with a faint smile. The English, he murmured to himself, they have such faith in their trains, and in their naps. The rhythmic clatter of the wheels comforted him. It had been 3 months since his last major case, and though the Belgian detective prided himself on loving order and repose, even he could not deny that he felt a little thrill at the summons he had received 2 days ago, a letter, hand-delivered, on heavy ivory paper sealed with a curious mark, a velvet envelope, black as midnight, with no sender's name. The letter had contained only a few lines. Monsieur Poirot. There is a matter of utmost discretion that requires your genius. I implore you to come to Windmere Hall, in Sussex. You will be met at the station. Time is of the essence. Yours, in secrecy and trust. Lady Constance Barrington. Poirot had found the choice of envelope, velvet, peculiar. It hinted at vanity, wealth, perhaps even melodrama. And the absence of detail intrigued him more. Now, as the train neared the small village of Windmere, he smoothed the cuffs of his grey suit and adjusted his bow tie. It would not do to arrive looking anything less than perfect. The train whistled and slowed, coming to a halt at a quaint, empty platform. A single porter waited, and beside him stood a tall man in a dark overcoat, holding an umbrella. As Poirot stepped down, the man approached briskly. Monsieur Hercule Poirot. I am he, yes. And you, monsieur? Thomas Briggs, chauffeur to Lady Barrington. The car is this way, sir. Her ladyship is expecting you at the hall. Poirot nodded. But of course she is. Let on, I pray you. The journey to the hall. The drive through the Sussex countryside was silent save for the low hum of the motor. Mist hung over the rolling fields, and trees loomed like sentinels. Poirot, peering through the rain-speckled window, noted the well-kept hedgerows and the hint of sea salt in the air. You have served Lady Barrington long, Mr. Briggs? He asked. 10 years, sir, the chauffeur replied stiffly. Since the late Lord Barrington passed. And the hall, it is isolated? Briggs hesitated. Aye, sir. Quite. Some say too quiet. But her ladyship values her privacy. Poirot's eyes twinkled. Privacy is a luxury, mon ami. But too much of it, eh bien, it can breed secrets. Briggs said nothing. Windmere Hall. Windmere Hall appeared suddenly as the road curved, a vast Georgian mansion of pale stone, its facade framed by ancient oaks. The windows glowed faintly in the gloom, and the gravel drive was lined with marble statues gone green with moss. A butler, tall and severe, waited on the steps. Mr. Alcott, Briggs said, nodding. The butler bowed slightly. Monsieur Poirot. Lady Barrington awaits you in the drawing room. Inside, the house was magnificent but faded, like an aging beauty who refused to admit her years. The chandeliers glittered, yet the carpets were worn. A faint smell of lavender and old smoke lingered. Poirot's little eyes darted everywhere. A house with history, he murmured. Mr. Alcott led him to a high-ceilinged drawing room where a fire burned cheerfully. There, seated in a carved chair, was Lady Constance Barrington, a woman of about 60, tall, with proud features and a cascade of silver hair pinned neatly. Her gown was of deep burgundy velvet, echoing the envelope's strange texture. She rose as Poirot entered. Monsieur Poirot, I cannot tell you how relieved I am that you have come. Poirot bowed. Madam, it is always an honor to be of service. But I confess, your letter, it was most mysterious. A detective must have a clue, even an invitation. A flicker of anxiety crossed her face. You shall have more than one clue, I fear. But first, tea. A household intention. Over tea, Lady Barrington introduced the household. Colonel Arthur Lytton, her late husband's old friend and now the estate's manager, gruff, red-faced, with a military bearing. Miss Violet Barrington, her niece, charming, sharp-eyed, about 26, and clearly restless in the dull grandeur of the hall. Dr. Lionel Graves, a family physician and frequent guest, tall, thin, with a nervous energy that made Poirot note him at once. And finally, Mr. Alcott, the butler, whose expression never changed, even when he poured tea with clockwork precision. Poirot observed each of them closely. He noticed how the colonel's glance lingered too long on Violet, how Violet herself avoided her aunt's eyes, and how Dr. Graves fidgeted whenever Lady Barrington spoke of her late husband. After the introductions, Lady Barrington dismissed the others with polite firmness. Now, Monsieur Poirot, we must speak alone. The secret of the velvet envelope. When the door closed, Lady Barrington turned to a bureau and unlocked a small drawer. From it, she drew a velvet envelope, identical to the one she had sent to Poirot, only this one bore a faint bloodstain near the edge. Poirot leaned forward, his interest sharpened. Ah! The twin of the first, and stained. This, I think, is the heart of your trouble. You are perceptive, monsieur. This envelope was found in my late husband's study 2 weeks ago, inside his locked desk. It was addressed to me, but he died 3 years ago. Mon Dieu, Poirot murmured. And what did it contain? Nothing. It was empty. Poirot's brow furrowed. An empty envelope, hidden away for years, and in velvet, not paper. Curious indeed. The texture, the secrecy, and the stain, you say, appeared recently. Yes, she said quietly. The night it was found. There was an accident, or perhaps not an accident. My maid, Alice, fell down the servants' staircase and broke her neck. The envelope was discovered the next morning in the wreck of her tray. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And you suspect, foul play? Lady Barrington hesitated. I cannot say. But there is something in this house, Monsieur Poirot. Something watching. I feel it in the corridors, in the way the servants whisper. My husband's death was said to be natural, but what if it was not? What if this thing, connects them? Poirot stood, his face grave. Then we must find out, madam. We shall begin with the study, and with the envelope. The study. The study of the late Lord Barrington was as one might expect, heavy drapes, the scent of tobacco, rows of law books and military trophies. Poirot, his every motion precise, examined the desk. The lock had indeed been forced recently. He noted a fine layer of dust, except where a rectangle had been cleared, the size of a letter. He knelt, brushing the floor with a silk handkerchief. No ashes in the grate, no sign of burning. Yet someone wished this envelope to vanish. Perhaps my maid found it, Lady Barrington suggested softly. And someone wished to stop her from revealing what she saw. Perhaps, Poirot said. But we must not jump to conclusions, non. First, we observe, then we reason. He crossed to a cabinet and found a small collection of correspondence tied with ribbon. Among them was a single sheet of pale blue stationery, unmarked, except for a faint perfume and the indentation of handwriting long faded. He held it to the light. Someone wrote, then tore away the sheet. See, there are marks from a pen. Lady Barrington peered closer. Can you read it? Poirot smiled faintly. Not yet. But with my little pencil and paper, we shall try. After a few moments of careful tracing, he read aloud the faint impression. If she ever learns the truth, it will destroy her. Lady Barrington turned pale. My God! Poirot replaced the sheet gently. So, we have a letter that never reached its destination, an envelope that hid nothing, and a dead maid who perhaps knew too much. Madam, your household is a stage, and we must find who plays the villain. The shadows lengthen. That evening, dinner at Windmere Hall was a tense affair. Poirot, seated between Violet and the Colonel, noted every word, every glance. Violet was bright but brittle, as though performing for an audience. The Colonel drank more than was polite, and Dr. Graves kept glancing toward the door, as if expecting someone to enter. At last, Lady Barrington rose. I shall retire early. The storm worsens, and I feel most uneasy. As the others dispersed, Poirot lingered in the hallway, watching the candles flicker in the draught. From the upper landing came a sudden whisper, a woman's voice, faint, frightened. Leave it alone, leave it be. He looked up sharply, but there was no one. The night intruder. Later that night, Poirot, ever restless when a mystery stirred, took a small lamp and crept through the corridors. The rain battered the windows. Somewhere, a clock chimed midnight. As he passed the study, he heard a faint sound, a drawer closing. He paused, then opened the door silently. Inside, by the glow of the fire, stood Miss Violet Barrington, dressed in a nightgown, her hair loose. In her hands, another velvet envelope. Mademoiselle. Poirot exclaimed softly. She gasped, nearly dropping it. Monsieur Poirot, I was only searching, yes. He stepped closer. For what, may I ask? Her eyes filled with tears. For answers. My uncle's death, my aunt's secrets, they've poisoned this house. That envelope, it's not the first. There were others. My uncle received them for months before he died. Indeed, Poirot said gravely. And you did not think to tell your aunt? She would never believe me. She still worships his memory. But I saw the truth in his eyes, fear. Poirot held out his hand. Permit me. She hesitated, then gave him the envelope. It was sealed, but unmarked, no address, no stamp. Poirot turned it over carefully, noting a faint scent of violets, the same perfume from the earlier letter. Ah, he murmured. So the past returns, wrapped in velvet. Suddenly, a shadow moved behind them. Violet gasped. Poirot turned, but the door was already swinging shut. Someone had been watching. The fire and the cry. Moments later, a scream echoed through the hall, a cry of pure terror. Poirot dashed into the corridor, Violet close behind. From the west wing came the smell of smoke. They reached the source, a small servant's room aflame, curtains burning fiercely. Briggs and the Colonel arrived with buckets, shouting orders. Dr. Graves came stumbling in, his face pale. Good Lord, who's in there? No one. Violet cried. That room's been empty since Alice died. But Poirot, scanning the floor, froze. Near the door lay a single object, singed, half-melted, but unmistakable. Another velvet envelope, blackened by fire. The first clue. When the flames were doused and calm returned, Poirot examined the remains by lamplight. The envelope seal had melted, but inside was a fragment of parchment, barely legible. He read aloud the single surviving phrase. The secret lies beneath the seventh stone. Poirot looked up, his eyes gleaming. Lady Barrington spoke of a family vault in the gardens, did she not? Violet nodded faintly. Yes, beneath the chapel. Then, Mademoiselle, Poirot said softly, we have our next destination. He rose, smoothing his jacket. But first, we must discover who prowls this house by night. For I suspect the velvet envelope conceals not only a secret, but a motive for murder. The vault beneath the chapel. The dawn broke cold and thin over Windmere Hall, the storm having passed but leaving the world soaked and silver with dew. Hercule Poirot, who prided himself on rising before both the sun and his suspicions, was already at his breakfast table with a modest cup of chocolate and two precisely cut slices of toast. Across from him sat Inspector Japp, summoned from London during the night by a telegram that read simply: Fire. Death suspected. Bring your sharpest hat. Poirot. Japp yawned. I swear, Poirot, you could find mischief in a convent. Poirot smiled. Mon ami, I do not find it, it finds me. The velvet envelope, it hides more than perfume and sentiment. Lady Barrington entered, pale but composed. Gentlemen, I hardly slept. Mr. Alcott has searched the west wing, no sign of an intruder. Ah, Poirot said softly, but an intruder who leaves fire in his wake seldom sleeps beneath your roof, madam. He, or she, slips in and out like a ghost. Do you believe my household guilty? She asked. Guilty of secrets, yes. Of murder? We shall see. The garden clue. By mid-morning the three of them, Poirot, Japp, and Lady Barrington, stood outside the small stone chapel that adjoined the manor gardens. Beyond the chapel stretched the family cemetery, quiet, ordered, and damp with fog. A narrow path of cobblestones led to the vault door set in the hillside. Beneath the seventh stone, Japp read from his notebook. Bit theatrical, that. Poirot counted each paving stone aloud. Un, deux, trois, voilà, the seventh. He knelt, brushing away moss. The stone bore a faint engraving, an intertwined B and L. Barrington and Lytton, Lady Barrington whispered. My husband's initials, and Colonel Lytton's. Japp frowned. Partnership in business? Not in business, she said quietly. In war. They served together in India, years ago. Poirot tapped the edge of the stone with his cane. A hollow sound answered. Gentlemen, and lady, it is not merely decorative. With Alcott's reluctant help they prized the slab free. Beneath lay a small tin box, rusted but intact. Inside were several papers, brittle with age, and, most curious of all, a photograph, two young officers standing beside a woman in native dress, her eyes defiant, her hands clasping a velvet pouch. Poirot studied the image. Ah! The envelope again, reborn as a relic of love or betrayal. Lady Barrington took the photo with trembling fingers. That woman, my husband never spoke of her. Then, madam, said Poirot gently, perhaps it is time he did, through those who remain. The Colonel's story. Colonel Lytton received them in the library, surrounded by hunting prints and the smell of brandy. His ruddy complexion paled when Poirot placed the photograph on the desk. Good Lord, he muttered. Where did you get that? Beneath the seventh stone, Japp said grimly. Care to explain? Lytton sank into his chair. That was Simla, 1914. We were young fools. The lady, her name was Amara, was a local interpreter. Barrington was infatuated, of course. I warned him. She was clever, ambitious, dangerous. Dangerous how? Asked Poirot. She had friends among revolutionaries. Letters were stolen from the Residency, official dispatches. The scandal would have ruined us. We recovered most, but one went missing, a list of informants. Men died because of it. Poirot's gaze sharpened. And this envelope, perhaps? Lytton swallowed. Yes. It was said she kept the list in a velvet pouch, swore she'd reveal it if ever betrayed. Lady Barrington's voice trembled. You mean my husband? I mean, Lytton cut in, your husband did what he thought necessary to protect his career. He left her. She vanished. Years later he received those cursed envelopes, each one empty, save for her perfume. Poirot nodded slowly. A ghost seeking vengeance. And now her scent returns. The maid's secret. That evening Poirot interviewed the remaining servants. Among them was a timid housemaid named Elsie, friend to the late Alice. She was frightened, sir, Elsie whispered. Said she'd found something that would change everything. Wouldn't tell me what. That night she was to meet someone by the chapel. Poirot leaned forward. And did you see anyone? Sir. A figure in a cloak. Could have been Mr. Alcott, or Dr. Graves. Hard to say. Poirot dismissed her kindly and returned to his room deep in thought. He placed the photograph beside the burned envelope on his desk and studied both under lamplight. A pattern, Hastings, non, Jap, a pattern emerges, he murmured to himself. Love, betrayal, vengeance, and perhaps inheritance. The doctor's confession. Dr. Graves knocked late that night, pale and trembling. Monsieur Poirot, may I speak in confidence? Mais oui, docteur. I've been treating Lady Barrington for nerves these past months. But that is not all. 3 years ago, when Lord Barrington died, I signed the certificate myself. Heart failure, they said. Yet, he hesitated, there were bruises on his throat, faint but unmistakable. I was told to keep silent. By whom? Poirot asked quietly. Graves' lips tightened. Mr. Alcott. He said the family's honor must be preserved. Très intéressant, Poirot murmured. And since then, the envelopes? They began arriving again 2 weeks ago. One even addressed to me. He handed Poirot a crumpled envelope. Inside was a single line written in delicate ink. Justice begins where silence ends. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Mon Dieu, the avenger grows bold. The night in the chapel. Determined to catch the mysterious intruder, Poirot arranged a little trap. At midnight he and Jap hid inside the chapel, lamps extinguished, the vault door slightly ajar. The wind sighed through the trees, an owl cried somewhere far away. At last, soft footsteps approached. A cloaked figure entered, carrying a candle. Poirot held his breath. The figure knelt before the open space where the tin box had been removed and whispered something in a foreign tongue. Then came the glint of steel, the blade of a knife. Now, Jap. Poirot hissed. They lunged forward, and the candle flared, revealing the intruder's face. Miss Violet Barrington. She dropped the knife, sobbing. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. Poirot steadied her gently. Mademoiselle, explain yourself. I only wanted to find the truth, she cried. I thought if I could read what was hidden here, I'd clear my uncle's name. But someone's been following me, trying to stop me. Who, mademoiselle? I don't know. But I found this. She drew from her cloak another small item, a locket, shaped like the velvet envelope, containing a miniature portrait of the same woman from the photograph. Amara, Poirot whispered. So the ghost lives on, in blood, perhaps. Violet shook her head. My father, Lord Barrington, told my mother once that he had a daughter before marriage, born in India. Do you see? She might still be alive. Poirot exchanged a look with Jap. So the past writes letters to the present. The disappearance. Morning brought new panic, Lady Barrington was missing. Her bed had not been slept in. The butler Alcott claimed she'd gone for a walk before dawn, the gardener swore he'd seen no one. Only a trail of footprints led from the terrace toward the cliffs beyond the gardens. At the edge of the cliff lay her shawl, and another velvet envelope, pinned beneath a stone. Inside was a scrap of parchment, wet but legible. 3 must fall before truth can rise. Jap cursed softly. This one's playin' games, Poirot. Poirot gazed toward the grey sea. Non, mon ami. Not games, justice twisted by memory. But Lady Barrington may yet live. She is too proud to vanish so simply. He turned to Violet. Mademoiselle, your aunt's disappearance serves a purpose, to draw us nearer the final revelation. The enemy is within these walls. The butler's mask. That night Poirot gathered the household in the drawing room, just as thunder rolled again beyond the windows. My friends, he began, the time has come for the truth. He produced the tin box, the photograph, and the locket. These three objects tell the story. Long ago in India, Lord Barrington betrayed a woman who loved him. She vanished, perhaps murdered. But she left behind a child, and a vow. That child grew, learned the truth, and returned under another name. He looked around the room, pausing deliberately. "Mr. Alcott," he said quietly, "remove your gloves." The butler stiffened. "Sir. Your hands, they are not those of a servant, they are those of a musician, delicate, ink-stained. You write with the same flourish as the notes in these envelopes." Alcott's face drained of color. "You've no proof. Au contraire. Your birth record, traced by my friend Jap this very morning. Registered Calcutta, 1902. Mother, Amara Singh. Father, unknown. But we can guess, non." A gasp ran through the room. Lady Barrington herself stepped from the doorway, alive, though weary. "So it is true," she whispered. "You are his son." Alcott bowed his head. "I wanted the truth to be known. He abandoned her. She died alone, disgraced. I came here years ago, took service under his name, waiting for the day I could expose him. And the deaths?" Jap barked. "The maid? The fire?" Alcott shook his head. "I never meant harm. Alice discovered the photograph, I only meant to frighten her. The fall was accident." Poirot's expression softened. "Perhaps. But vengeance rarely keeps its hands clean." The hidden letter. Lady Barrington approached, tears shining. "If you are truly my husband's son, then you are my son too. The sins of the past end tonight." But Poirot lifted one final piece of parchment from the tin box, its writing faint but unmistakable. "To whomever finds this, forgive me. The woman I wronged bore my child. Provide for her. Her name is Violet. Geoffrey Barrington." The room fell silent. Violet stared at the letter. "Me? But that means—" "We," said Poirot softly. "You and Mr. Alcott share the same blood. Half-siblings, divided by time and secrecy." Lady Barrington sank into her chair. "God forgive us all." Poirot's reflection. Later, as dawn touched the windows once more, Jap lit his pipe. "So that's it then. Two children of the same man, one raised in luxury, the other in silence." Poirot nodded. "And both victims of pride. The velvet envelope, it was never about money or treason. It was a symbol of a promise broken, of love betrayed. Each letter cried for recognition. Will you turn Alcott in?" Poirot looked toward the garden where the first snow was falling. "He will face justice, yes. But I suspect Lady Barrington will see that mercy walks beside it." He sighed, adjusting his cuffs. "It is curious, mon ami. In every mystery, there lies a heart, sometimes wounded, sometimes wicked. But always human." Jap chuckled. "And I thought it was just envelopes." Poirot smiled faintly. "Ah, but inside every envelope, Inspector, there is always a secret." The mirror and the mask. The snow continued to fall over Windmere Hall like a soft white curtain, covering the garden paths, the chapel roof, even the cracks in the terrace stones that had witnessed so much turmoil. For 2 days there was silence in the great house. Lady Barrington, weakened but resolute, had ordered that the police take Mr. Alcott into custody. Inspector Jap had accompanied him to London for questioning, leaving Hercule Poirot to "mind the pieces," as Jap put it. But Poirot did not rest. He sensed that the tale of the velvet envelope was not yet finished. There were still too many inconsistencies, too many shadows that refused to be dispelled by confession alone. A house of guilt. On the third morning Violet came to the breakfast room. Her face was pale, her movements restless. "Have they charged him?" she asked. Not yet, mademoiselle, said Poirot. Inspector Japp telegraphed this morning. They have verified his identity. His name indeed was Lucien Amara Barrington, though he used the alias Alcott. But they found something in his luggage that interests me greatly. He produced a small object wrapped in paper. A mirror, in a velvet case. Violet frowned. A mirror? What does that mean? Patience, mademoiselle. The velvet again, the same symbol repeated. The case and the envelopes are of identical fabric, even the scent. This mirror, I think, is not for vanity, but remembrance. Poirot opened the case. Inside the glass was faintly etched an inscription. To L, that he may see himself as I saw him. Amara, Violet whispered. Her handwriting. Poirot nodded. Yes. The mirror and the mask, truth and illusion. But what truth did she wish him to see? A visitor in the snow. Late that afternoon a motor car appeared through the snow, bearing a new visitor, a tall, thin man with silver hair and a walking stick carved with an elephant's head. Major Edmund Cavendish, he announced to the butler. Old friend of the family. Heard of the unpleasantness, Poirot greeted him politely. You served with Lord Barrington, I think. Indeed. India, same regiment as Lytton and the rest. Terrible shame about all this. Constance wrote to me years ago, never mentioned a son. Poirot invited him to sit. The major's eyes wandered to the photograph on the mantel, the one showing the two officers and the woman. Good heavens, he said. Where did you get that? You recognize it, monsieur? Of course. That was taken at the Residency ball. But there's something missing, there were 3 men in the picture, not 2. Poirot leaned forward. 3. You are certain? Perfectly. Barrington, Lytton, and a young lieutenant, Graves, the doctor here. Someone has cut him out. The doctors passed. Poirot wasted no time. He found Dr. Graves in the conservatory, nervously tending a row of orchids. Doctor, he said pleasantly, you have a fine hand with flowers. One must have patience, and secrecy. Graves gave a brittle smile. Plants don't lie, Monsieur Poirot. Nor do photographs, except when someone cuts them. Poirot showed him the image. Major Cavendish remembers you were there. Why erase yourself? Graves' fingers trembled. Because I was ashamed. I loved her, Amara. Barrington used her and cast her aside. I tried to protect her, but she trusted him more. When she died, I swore I'd never speak her name. Died? Poirot said sharply. So you know her fate? Graves hesitated. She took her own life. At least, that is what we were told. But now, seeing these envelopes, this child, perhaps we were deceived. Poirot's gaze softened. Perhaps indeed, Docteur. The Mask of Charity. That evening Lady Barrington summoned Poirot to her study. She sat by the fire, holding the velvet mirror. I cannot sleep, she said. Everything I believed about my husband is changing. Was he cruel, or only weak? Poirot regarded her gravely. Perhaps both. But there is something more pressing. You have a charity trust in your husband's name, do you not? Funds sent to Calcutta? Yes. He founded it for missionary schools. May I see the account books? She looked puzzled but complied. Poirot turned the pages quickly, his eyes gleaming. Voila. Large transfers every year, to a certain Sister Amara Foundation. And who manages it? None other than Dr. Graves. Lady Barrington gasped. You think? I think, Poirot said quietly, that death may have been a disguise. The journey to London. The next morning they travelled by train to London, snow whirling past the windows. Violet accompanied them, determined to face whatever truth awaited. Poirot's mind ticked like a clock. At Scotland Yard, Japp met them with a grin. Your butler's quiet as a mouse. Claims he never harmed anyone. But look at this, Poirot. He handed over a telegram. Came from India last night. The Amara Foundation was dissolved 10 years ago, no record of death for the lady who founded it. Poirot's eyes twinkled. So she lives. And perhaps she, not her son, began this little play of envelopes. Japp frowned. But why now? Because, mon ami, Poirot murmured, the final act is ready. The Mirror House. Following a single clue from the financial records, they arrived at a small townhouse in Bloomsbury. Its brass plate read Dr. Lydia Graves, psychotherapist. Inside, the air was perfumed faintly, violets and sandalwood. A woman rose to greet them. She was tall, poised, with dark eyes and streaks of silver in her hair. Dr. Graves? Poirot asked. Yes, she said calmly. I am Lydia Graves. And you are the famous Hercule Poirot. I wondered how long it would take you. Violet gasped. You look, like me. The woman smiled sadly. Because we share blood, child. Poirot inclined his head. Then you are, Amara's daughter? I am Amara, she said simply. The reports of my death were, convenient. Amara's story. She told them the tale without bitterness. Betrayed and abandoned, she had faked her death with the help of sympathetic friends, then built a new life in England under another name. When Barrington died, she resolved to expose him, but age and distance had tempered vengeance into curiosity. She had written the letters, testing the conscience of those who remained. But then, she said, someone stole the envelopes from my office and sent them here prematurely. That was Lucien. My son. Poirot bowed his head. He wished to avenge you. Yes. I begged him to stop, but he was too proud. He blamed them all for my pain. Lady Barrington stepped forward, tears in her eyes. You should have come to me. I would have. Would you? Amara said softly. Once, perhaps, you might have cast me out as a scandal. Now you pity me because time has softened your heart. Violet moved between them. Please, both of you, no more secrets. You are my family. Amara looked at her niece, her half-sister, and something melted in her gaze. Then let the truth free us all. The final twist. Poirot, however, remained troubled. One thing, madam. The phrase in the last envelope, 3 must fall before truth can rise. There have been 2 deaths, your husband and the maid. Who was meant to be the third? Amara's expression darkened. I did not write that one. They stared at her. Someone altered my message, she continued. I sent only 5 letters. The last, I entrusted to my assistant, Dr. Lionel Graves. Her brother, Violet whispered. Japp swore softly. Good Lord, Poirot, he's still at Windmere. Poirot's face hardened. Then we must return at once. Return to Windmere. They arrived that night. The hall loomed against the moonlit snow, silent and expectant. Inside, the servants were gone, only the echo of the clock remained. Poirot found Dr. Graves in the study, standing before the fire. On the desk lay a revolver and a velvet envelope. So it ends, the doctor said quietly. You found her. You found everything. Not quite, Poirot replied. You altered the final letter. Why? Graves smiled sadly. Because there was a third who must fall, me. I was the one who poisoned Barrington. He ruined Amara's life, used her and cast her aside. I gave him peace, a gentle death. And when the maid discovered my secret, I frightened her, too much. He raised the revolver. Now the circle closes. Non, cried Violet. Enough death. Poirot stepped forward, his voice calm. "Doctor, you loved Amara. Would she want this? To lose another soul to vengeance?" Graves wavered, tears spilling. "She forgave me once, perhaps she would again." Poirot reached out slowly, taking the weapon. "She already has." The doctor sank to his knees, sobbing. Outside, the snow began to fall again, covering the tracks of sin and sorrow. The letter in the mirror. Later, Poirot stood alone in the drawing room. He opened the mirror's velvet case once more. Behind the glass he discovered a folded slip of paper he had not seen before. "To the one who sees clearly, truth is not in vengeance but in mercy. Let the mirror show you not what was lost, but what remains." He smiled faintly. "Wise words, madam." Lady Barrington entered quietly. "Is it over, Monsieur Poirot?" "For now," he said. "But the past never dies, it only changes its mask." Violet and Amara stood together in the doorway, their resemblance striking in the lamplight. "Then let us wear no masks," Violet said. "Let us begin again." Poirot bowed. "It is the simplest of endings, and therefore, the truest." He glanced once more at the mirror. His reflection looked back, small, precise, satisfied. The shadow of the fourth letter. Windmere Hall seemed quieter now, yet peace sat uneasily upon it. The snow that had blanketed its gardens began to thaw, revealing patches of dark soil, like secrets surfacing through memory. Poirot had stayed on a few days more, at Lady Barrington's request, to see that the ghosts truly rest. But ghosts, as he often said, have stubborn habits. A morning disturbed. At breakfast Violet burst into the dining room, clutching a small parcel wrapped in brown paper. "It was delivered just now, Monsieur Poirot. No postmark, no address, only my name on the wrapper." Poirot raised an eyebrow. "Ah. When the past knocks, it seldom uses the post." He unwrapped it carefully. Inside lay another velvet envelope, deep crimson this time, not black. Upon its seal, embossed in gold, was a single numeral, 4. Violet whispered, "The fourth letter." Poirot frowned. "Strange, mademoiselle. We have seen 5 before, yet this one claims to precede the last. A letter misplaced, or deliberately withheld." He broke the seal. Inside, on thin ivory paper, were 7 words written in an elegant hand. "Look to the portrait that never was." Lady Barrington crossed herself. "What can it mean?" "Patience, madam," said Poirot. "The little grey cells shall work." The missing portrait. In the long gallery hung generations of Barrington ancestors, men in scarlet uniforms, women in pearls. Poirot paced slowly along the line of painted faces. "Observe," he murmured, "a portrait for each heir, but between your husband's and your own, there is space. A gap on the wall, covered by curtain. Pourquoi?" Lady Barrington hesitated. "That frame was left empty. Geoffrey intended to commission a portrait before he died. The painter arrived the very week of his illness. His name? Adrien Devereux." Poirot's mustache quivered. "Ah! A name I know. A painter, and a blackmailer." He pulled back the curtain. Beneath the dust cloth stood not an empty frame but a painting turned to the wall. He lifted it carefully. The canvas revealed Lord Barrington seated beside a young woman, not Constance, but Amara Singh. The brushwork was unfinished, yet their closeness was unmistakable. Violet gasped. "It's her." Poirot nodded slowly. "Indeed. The portrait that never was, because it was never meant to be seen." On the back of the frame, faint pencil scrawl caught the light. "Paid in full, A.D." Devereux sold his silence, Poirot said grimly. "But to whom?" "A visit from the painter." That evening, Poirot telephoned Jap. Within hours, a reply arrived. "Adrien Devereux. Resides Brighton." Recently returned from abroad. Questionable associates. By dawn, Poirot and Violet were on the road to Brighton. The sea mist curled over the promenade, and gulls wheeled like restless thoughts. Devereux's studio was a chaos of canvases and cigarette smoke. The artist himself, gaunt and sardonic, eyed them warily. Barrington's ghost, eh? I wondered when you'd come. You painted him, said Poirot. I did. And her. She paid me more than he did. Told me to keep the picture hidden until her death. Poirot leaned forward. Then why now? Why send a new envelope? Devereux smirked. Because someone offered me double to deliver it, to the young lady here. Who? He shrugged. Didn't give a name. Met me through a solicitor, Hargreaves and Lyle, Fleet Street. Said it was family business. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Family, yes, but whose branch of it? The solicitor's revelation. By afternoon they were seated in the dark oak office of Mr. Lyle, the junior partner. He looked distinctly uncomfortable under Poirot's steady gaze. The client insisted on anonymity, he protested. Merely requested that the letter be sent to Miss Violet Barrington on this date, no earlier, no later. Was payment in cash? Yes, sir. Poirot tapped the desk gently. Then, monsieur, perhaps you will recognize this? He produced the mirror's velvet case. Lyle blanched. Why, that very fabric. The envelope was made of it. Exactly. And it came from a lady doctor named Lydia Graves, did it not? The solicitor hesitated. She did inquire about our services months ago. Poirot rose. Merci, that is enough. Outside, Violet looked bewildered. But why would Amara send me another letter? Poirot smiled faintly. Because, my dear, she is not the only one who writes. Return to London. They found Amara at her townhouse, calm as ever. The moment she saw the crimson envelope, she shook her head. Not mine. I never used red velvet. And the handwriting, it is Lucien's. Her voice faltered. He must have written it before you arrested him. Poirot examined the ink. Yes, same shade, same slope. But look closer, madam. The date on the paper's watermark, recent. He could not have written it in custody. Then who? Violet whispered. Poirot's eyes gleamed. That, mademoiselle, is what we shall discover, through the shadow the fourth letter casts. An unexpected visitor. That night, while Poirot reviewed his notes in the drawing-room, footsteps sounded in the corridor. The door opened quietly. Major Cavendish entered, hat in hand. Forgive the hour, Monsieur Poirot. I've just come from Brighton. Devereux is dead. Dead, cried Violet. Found in his studio. Gas poisoning. Suicide, they think. But the police found this beside him. He handed Poirot a slip of paper. The mirror shows only half. Poirot read it twice, then folded it neatly. Major, I thank you. This changes everything. The mirror's secret. Back in his room, Poirot lit a single candle and examined the velvet mirror again. The words on the hidden note echoed in his mind, the mirror shows only half. He tilted it toward the light, and there, faintly visible beneath the silvered surface, another layer of glass appeared, thinner and darker. He prized the backing loose. Between the panes lay a photograph fragment, half of the original portrait. It showed not Barrington, but another man, Colonel Lytton, with Amara's hand upon his arm. Mon Dieu, whispered Poirot. The triangle becomes a square. The colonel confronted. The next morning he confronted Lytton in the library. Colonel, he began, you lied about your friendship. You were more than a comrade, you were her lover. Lytton's face flushed crimson. It was years before Barrington met her. He never knew. But she did. She used both of you, one for passion, one for power. And when the betrayal came, she left each a reminder. To you, the mirror. To him, the envelopes. Yet the question remains, who killed Devereux? Lytton met his gaze. I didn't. But he sent me a letter last week, threatened to expose us all unless I paid. I burned it. Poirot nodded slowly. Then another hand finished the task, someone protecting the family name. Lady Barrington's confession. That evening Lady Barrington summoned Poirot once more. Her face was drawn but resolute. You needn't search further, Monsieur Poirot. I paid Devereux. I begged him to destroy the painting. I did not know he was dead until tonight. Then the crimson envelope. She shook her head. Not mine. Poirot sighed. Then the circle of deception remains incomplete. The fourth letter points backward to the portrait, yes, but also forward, to the one who profits most from confusion. He looked meaningfully at Violet, who blushed. Mademoiselle, forgive an old man's curiosity, but you stand to inherit this estate, do you not? Yes, she said softly. But I never wanted it. Poirot smiled. Then we must prove that before others decide you did. The fire in the gallery. At midnight the alarm bell rang. Poirot raced to the gallery, smoke poured from the doorway. The portraits blazed like torches. Violet stood frozen at the threshold, horror in her eyes. Someone's destroying them, she cried. Through the smoke Poirot glimpsed a figure fleeing down the corridor, a woman's silhouette. He followed, coughing, until he reached the courtyard. There, by the frozen fountain, stood Amara Singh. She held a lantern and a bundle of half-burned papers. Madam, Poirot said gently, why? Because, she whispered, I wanted to end it. These faces, these lies, they have chained us all. Non, said Poirot softly. Truth cannot be burned, it only glows brighter. He took the bundle from her trembling hands. Among the ashes lay one intact sheet, the original fourth letter, written not in Lucien's nor Amara's hand but in a third, firm, masculine. He read aloud. The final secret lies not in India nor in England, but in the heart of she who bears my name. G.B. Geoffrey Barrington, murmured Lady Barrington, who had joined them. My husband wrote it himself. Poirot nodded. Yes. He anticipated all of this, the quarrels, the revelations. This letter was his confession and his warning. And now, my friends, we must find the fifth letter, his last testament. Poirot's reflection. As dawn crept through the smoke-stained windows, Poirot stood once more in the gallery's ruins. Only one portrait survived, the unfinished painting of Barrington and Amara, its edges singed but the faces untouched. He murmured to himself, there is order in chaos after all. The painter lies dead, the butler imprisoned, the doctor disgraced, but still one hand writes from beyond the grave. He turned to Violet and Lady Barrington. Prepare yourselves. The final act approaches, and with it, the true secret of the velvet envelope. The last envelope. A dawn of ashes. Morning broke over Windmere Hall, pale and weary. The fire that had consumed the gallery had finally been tamed, leaving behind only smoke-stained stone and charred fragments of family pride. Poirot stood at the terrace doors, his immaculate suit untouched by the chaos around him. Such destruction, murmured Lady Barrington. And all for secrets that should have died with my husband. Poirot's mustache twitched. Secrets, madam, are like weeds. They survive neglect. Only truth can uproot them completely. Violet entered quietly, clutching a soot-marked box. The servants found this among the debris, she said. It was hidden behind the frame that survived. Poirot took it carefully. The box was small, oak-bound with brass corners. On the lid, barely legible through the smoke, was engraved. To be opened by my wife, and by her alone, should the letters ever return. Lady Barrington's hand trembled as she turned the key that still hung around her neck. Inside lay a final black velvet envelope, thicker than the rest, sealed with wax bearing Lord Barrington's crest. "The last one," whispered Violet. Poirot bowed slightly. "Yes, mademoiselle, the last act of our drama. 2. The Testament of Geoffrey Barrington." Lady Barrington broke the seal. Within lay 2 sheets of paper, folded together with a faded photograph. Poirot gestured for her to read aloud. Her voice quavered. "To my wife, Constance, and to the daughter of Amara Singh, should this find her. I have lived too long beneath the weight of lies. In youth, I wronged a woman who trusted me, in age, I sought to make amends. Lucien is my son. Let him inherit what I denied him, for he carries my blood and my guilt alike. The mirror and the envelopes were my confessions, scattered so that the truth would reach each of you when I could no longer defend myself. Know this, I did not die of natural causes. I was poisoned, not by another, but by my own remorse. I chose it. Forgive me." The final line was signed simply, G. Barrington. A hush fell. Even the ticking clock seemed to hesitate. Lady Barrington pressed the paper to her heart. He took his own life." Poirot nodded gently. "Yes. It fits perfectly with what the doctor described, an illness sudden, without cause, yet calm acceptance. The poison left no trace because it was measured with precision. Your husband planned even his death." Violet's eyes filled with tears. "Then no one killed him, and Lucien, he's innocent." Poirot smiled faintly. "Not innocent of deceit perhaps, but free of murder, yes." Free, a visit to Newgate. 2 days later, Poirot and Lady Barrington visited Lucien in custody. He looked pale but composed, his hands folded neatly before him. Poirot placed the letter on the table. "Monsieur," read. Lucien's eyes widened as he took in the words. His face crumpled, and for the first time his voice broke. He admitted it. After all those years. Lady Barrington leaned forward. "He loved you, Lucien. In his own flawed way. And he wished you to have his name." Lucien shook his head. "I never wanted his name. I wanted truth." Poirot's voice was soft. "And now you have both. What will you do with them?" The young man hesitated. "Begin again. Not as a Barrington, but as myself." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "A wise choice. Identity, like justice, must never be borrowed." 4. The mirror once more. That evening, Poirot returned alone to the smoking ruins of the gallery. From his pocket he withdrew the velvet mirror, the object that had started it all. Its glass was cracked, but it still reflected the faint light of the fire. He turned it over once more, tracing the inscription. "To L, that he may see himself as I saw him." He murmured, "Ah, Madame Amara, how cruelly honest love can be." Behind him, Amara appeared silently, her dark coat blending with the shadows. "He has forgiven us both," she said. "The letter proves it." Poirot nodded. "And you, madame? Can you forgive yourself?" She looked into the fractured mirror, where her reflection broke into a dozen shards. "Perhaps that will take another lifetime." Poirot placed the mirror gently into her hands. "Then let it be your beginning, not your end." The dinner at Windmere. Weeks later, a quiet peace had returned to Windmere Hall. Lady Barrington insisted on a dinner, to mark the closing of the affair, as society called it. Poirot, ever fond of ceremony, agreed to attend. Japp was there too, cheerful and loud as always. "So, Poirot, all tied up nicely, eh? I'll wager you're glad it wasn't murder for once." Poirot smiled. "On the contrary, mon ami, it was the most delicate kind of murder, the one a man commits against his own conscience." Lady Barrington raised her glass. "To truth," she said softly. Violet added, and to mercy. Amara, sitting opposite, inclined her head. And to family, however strange its threads may be. The clink of crystal echoed like a benediction through the hall. 6. Poirot reflects. Later, as the guests retired, Poirot remained by the drawing-room fire, notebook in hand. His reflections were tidy, precise. The affair of the velvet envelope, not a crime of greed, but of guilt. The objects, mirror, letters, portrait, all symbols of self-knowledge. Each suspect sought to hide from truth, each was forced to face it. The greatest detective is not the one who finds who killed, but who understands why. He closed the notebook. Eh bien, he murmured, perhaps that is what the good Hastings never understood. Not every case ends with handcuffs, sometimes, it ends with forgiveness. 7. The Velvet Wind. Before he departed for London, Poirot took one last walk through the grounds. The snow had melted into soft earth, and the air carried the scent of new beginnings. By the chapel stood Violet, holding a small bundle wrapped in black velvet. "It's father's letters," she said. "What should I do with them?" "Keep them," Poirot replied. "Not as relics, but as reminders. The dead speak only to those who listen." She smiled faintly. "You make even sorrow sound beautiful." Poirot's eyes softened. "Sorrow, mademoiselle, is only love that has forgotten how to smile." She handed him one envelope. "For you, Monsieur Poirot." "A thank you." He accepted it with a bow. Inside was a card that read simply. "To the one who restored the Order of Hearts." Poirot's mustache lifted in satisfaction. Ah! At last, a mystery with a happy ending. 8. Epilogue, the secret revealed. Weeks later, back in his London apartment, Poirot placed the case files neatly upon his shelf. On his desk sat the cracked mirror, the final envelope, and a small note written in his own hand. The secret found in the velvet envelope was not death, nor love, nor revenge, it was truth. And truth, once discovered, must be cherished, for it is rarer than justice and twice as fragile. He adjusted the mirror so that it caught the afternoon light. For a brief moment, his reflection seemed to smile back at him, not smugly, but kindly, as if even Hercule Poirot had learned a little humility. He straightened his tie, whispered, "Order and method," and closed the curtains. Outside, London moved on, oblivious, ordinary, alive. Inside, the great detective rested his little grey cells at last. The end. Hercule Poirot and the secret found in the velvet envelope.